Everybody to episode number 8 of the Swiss Army Man podcast. My name is Anthony. You can call me Tony, call me Tone, call me anything you want. But I'm the host of this podcast. It's been a pretty awesome process so far, getting through these first couple of them and kind of finding how I want to handle these podcasts, what I want to talk about, how I want to lay the structure out, and all that kind of stuff. So thanks for listening and watching me grow, I guess, as we go through this. First off, I want to start off by saying thank you to all the cool responses I got to the last podcast. It was pretty awesome. I wasn't even going to put that podcast out. I wasn't sure. I definitely thought long and hard about putting it out. But I felt it was something that needed to go out because it was very true to who I am, and that was the point of this podcast, was to show the good, the bad, everything in between. When I started this, so not to leave much off the table. I do want it to be light and fun, but I also want it to be an awesome, realistic experience, like you would be sitting down talking with a friend, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that a bunch of you guys reached out to me, whether it be actually on Twitter or like in the DMs of Twitter, to tell me that they enjoyed the episode. So I'm glad you guys did, and I'm always here. My DMs are always open, so if you guys want to talk about anything or want to talk through anything, I'm always there too. So definitely feel free to reach out. We're a community, so let's take care of each other. So to start out this episode, I kind of want to go sort of with something in that ballpark, which is, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Emma Watson, Hermione Granger, as we all like to know her as, trended on Twitter today by saying instead of being single, she identifies as self-partnered, to which I'm sure you can guess that the reaction was a little bit mixed. Some people saying it was stupid, some people thinking it was awesome, and everything in between. So I read a little bit about it. So it came out of this this interview. I think it was in UK Vogue. I think I could be wrong on that, but basically where she was talking about things like approaching her 30th birthday and having pressures of like being married and having kids, and how it seemed like the connotation of being single was like you didn't have your life together, so she identifies as self-partnered. So she's choosing to be single, which I saw a lot of people like kind of bashing her for, saying self-partnered instead of single, and how it is either the same thing or thanks for making another word that we're gonna have to use in the future. But I think it's actually a good representation of it, because I think a lot of people that I know, especially like in my actual like personal life, that are single people, talk about the pressures as they get older of having a partner, or looking for a partner, or being off of a historical normal timeline of getting married, having kids, etc. So for me personally, I knew I wanted to be married when I was young. I always enjoyed having a partner, being somebody that you could like bounce things off of, and really like take a big interest in a lot of things you have interest in, even if they don't have interests, the same interest. They were there to support you and coach you and help you, and be your pickup when you needed it, and be your cool down when you were feeling yourself a little too much. And I did so. I married at I was 24 the first time I got married, and proceeded to have a child before, literally a week after our 1-year wedding anniversary. That marriage didn't work out. but from that, I learned that that having a strong partner and having somebody that was um, very on the same page is an integral part of having a marriage work. So the second time I got married, I was a lot older than 24, but I'd been in the relationship with this woman for a long time. So it wasn't necessarily that like we hadn't been together. We'd been together for quite a while. So being married to my wife is something that teaches me almost on a regular basis. And I'm a pretty hard-headed dude. So like I put a lot of things through a filter that is maybe things that aren't as big of a deal as they seem to be. So like for me, hearing like a no, it's in the sense of like a business or like something like that. Hearing a no doesn't necessarily mean no in the standpoint of like being a salesman. Like it's more so like what's going to hook the person to buy the sale or to buy or something or so on and so forth. So in a relationship, you hear things that aren't no's per se, but like things that are like, hey, you're doing this wrong. And it's like, okay, you put it in, but you're like, it's just caught her in a bad moment, or and the environment was in a raised state, so like that's why that reaction was that or whatever. So I always just kind of thought everything was even keel and it was like normal and being like that. It was like, those things, brush them off. Said a lot of things that like were stupid. I grew up in a family where like we cursed a lot and we said a lot of mean things to each other and things that weren't very nice. From the outside, our family looked very awesome, and I can say that like my parents are still married and taught me a lot about marriage, good and bad, and things that like I kind of thought were norms that aren't norms, and things that I didn't think were norms that are norms, and stuff like that. But learned a lot of lessons from that, and learned a lot of lessons from the having a partner and treating them properly, and them treating you properly, and still at this day and age at 36, I'm in a spot where like I'm still learning and growing, and probably doing some of the most growing I've done in my entire life. I go to therapy on a regular basis to work on myself, to work on being a better person, to work on how to interact with like some of the feelings that I have, how to maybe get a sense of like what is more normal than like the things that I thought were norms, because everybody has their own backstory and everyone brings their own stuff to the table, and the stuff I brought to the table, which I thought was normal, is not normal, and things that I definitely took for granted, and just simple things like how to talk to somebody. My wife has put up, I said it in the last podcast, my wife's put up with a lot of bullshit from me. Not anything like maybe super ridiculously crazy to some people, but I've said a lot of mean things. I've said, I've definitely not done the things that I should have done as a husband or as a partner in a lot of circumstances. I pushed to have talks when it wasn't the right time to talk, and I've been quiet when it wasn't the right time to be quiet, and I didn't hold up my end of the bargain for a long time, and my wife's an incredible woman, and staying with me is an amazing superhero feat that like I can't even imagine. Like I know a lot of people who see me on maybe like Twitter or something like that would be like, oh, seems like a really good guy, seems like an awesome guy. Didn't do any of the common things like cheating and all that kind of stuff that like someone would think of being negative or anything like that, but just being very flippant with the way I treated someone's emotions and the words I used and stuff like that are things that I'm not proud of as a person. And I didn't learn those. I'm 36. I didn't learn those until probably, in the last couple of years. So reading Emma Watson's story of self-partnering and feeling the pressure, I don't think that it's in everyone's cards to get married young. I think some people can get married young, but I think they have to be very, very resilient people, because you're going to deal with a lot of mistakes and a lot of growing from the other person. And if you can't put up with those things and watch that person grow or not grow or figure that out, then you're going to have a hard time getting through probably those first 5-10 years of marriage. Whereas, like, I think going through it, and my marriage isn't perfect, far from it, probably, and there's people that probably have far better relationships than I do. You learn to put up with the good and the bad, and you learn to hope that person understands when good is good and bad is bad, and that they help you get from the bad to the good, and do it in a way that it works for you. And for me, I found something that has worked for me on a personal level. But I've left a lot of damage in my way, in the back of that is emotional and emotional damage, and that my wife has to deal with, probably, I'm sure, on her end, to even the full scope that I don't even know, of things that I've done and things that I've probably said that weren't the way you should go about talking to somebody. So Emma Watson's self-partnering, or self-partnered, I think it's an interesting twist. Obviously, she's definitely single. She's not dating anyone, but I think what she's saying is she's working on herself. She's working on being the best partner that she needs for the situation she's in. She's not going to rush into things that don't seem like to make sense to her. So I commend Emma Watson for saying it. And I think a lot of people will probably use it out of context, and a lot of people will say stupid things about it, or super way to agree with it. But it seems like, from what she was saying, she's got the right message there in being self-partnered. She's not going to rush into something that doesn't make sense, and something that just to fill the social norms of being married and having kids and all of that kind of stuff. And let's be honest, it's almost 2020. I mean, we're getting into the phrase where what is normal anymore? Gary Vee says an awesome thing about business is the things that we think are social norms, or the things that with things that are social norms now. And the reason why you won't make a decision now on a certain thing is because you're trying to fulfill the social norm of today, isn't always going to be the narrative. So 10 years ago, meeting your spouse online and having the person that you're married to be someone that you dated or you found on a dating app online seemed really weird. Now, most people we know have found the person that they're with on a social dating app, or something like that, or through a friend of a friend on a Facebook or something like that. So social norms change, and so it's being 40 and having your first kid isn't as abnormal as it used to be. Getting married later in life isn't as abnormal. I think that comes obviously from a generation of kids who have seen their parents divorce at a high rate, and realize that maybe rushing into a marriage and sticking to it isn't the thing that they want to do. So why not wait and make sure that person's the right person? Living with your spouse before marriage is probably at an all-time high as well. People who aren't married but in long-term relationships is more of a norm. So found that very interesting, that it was trending for a bunch of different reasons, and I thought it would be a good take to go down and talk kind of a little bit personal, as well as just the way I see things. I think treating yourself right and being the best person you can be going into a lifetime of commitment, which is what marriage is definitely the way to go about it. You don't want to be working on yourself in a major way while in a marriage, because it's tough. You have to, like, you're making changes, and that you got to hope that other person sees that change that you're making and actually, like, believes it, because most likely if you're making this massive changes because you have this issue in the past, that's probably broken trust and stuff like that. Whether that be, like, I don't know, drug addiction, cheating, all those kind of things fall under that. But if you can be more of who you actually naturally are coming into a marriage, and maybe that takes you longer in life to figure out who you actually are, it's probably for the better, and probably will help divorce rates go down and all of that kind of stuff. So that's my 2 cents on that. Moving to a lighter topic, it's that time of the season where teams are flustered in the NFL, and they are either going to make some moves or change out quarterbacks, stuff like that. We saw a number of mainstay quarterbacks not playing this year due to injury or, like, being, like, moved out of the starting lineup. Eli Manning, Andy Dalton, a number of other ones, as well as we've seen, because of injury, Nick Foles and Cam Newton go out, while Kyle Allen and Gardner Minshew took over. And so I just saw Cam Newton got put on IR. He is out for the season. They are going to go with Kyle Allen, which I don't think is a big deal, because Christian McCaffrey is a freaking beast of a running back. That dude's just, like, if he's got a chance of winning MVP, and it's going to be absurd. Dude is the real deal, and it's crazy to see, like, the numbers he puts up and how he, like, breaks through on runs and screens and all that. So Kyle Allen has a little bit of an easier job because he has that safety valve there, which definitely helps him out. But I think he has the confidence that he doesn't have to get all of it in one shot. It'll be interesting to see when it comes to maybe more like, you're the quarterback, so you're going to need to take over a game, because maybe Christian McCaffrey's game planned out, like, by the other defense to stop him and make Kyle Allen beat them. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see as he progresses more and plays more games. But so far so good on that front. The question here is Cam done in Carolina? It's highly possible, especially if they produce well. Kyle Allen seems like a capable backup. You have a guy who's probably under contract for a lot less than Cam is. Cam's contract, I believe, is all the guaranteed money's gone, so I'm pretty sure they can cut ties with him after the season and not lose a dime, or not have to pay much. I think in the way of process, I think that's what I was reading is I think all of his on the books money is gone after this year, so they can cut and dry that. So if they do produce well, I wouldn't be surprised if they move on from Cam, which is kind of nuts because Cam a couple years ago was in the Super Bowl and looked like his stock was even higher on the rise. I do think he'll have a good second act somewhere if he does go somewhere, especially if he picks properly and goes to a team that is suited to play around him and has a good defense. So, I mean, even a team like the Bears would have been a good fit, I think. They have enough of the receiving weapons. He could attack. They have a good, decent running game. They have a good defense. Something like that. I could definitely see him helping out. Even a number of other teams. You're going to have a number of teams that are going to be looking for maybe to make some changes from other quarterbacks at the end of the season. The Gardner Minshew getting benched for Nick Foles kind of makes sense. I was talking to my buddy Logan about this the other day, and I was like, Gardner Minshew, just keep Gardner Minshew. And but they did pay Nick Foles way too much money, and a lot of that's on the books. So even if you get rid of him, you're still eating a lot of that contract, so it's tough. Keep Gardner Minshew on that contract, maybe bring him up slowly. That way when Foles can get out of there, they can get him out of there, and maybe Gardner Minshew can come in and have a great career. We've seen some good stuff from him and some bad stuff from him. But it makes sense that Nick Foles will go back in. They paid him a lot of money, played like 3 snaps essentially, and before he got injured, and makes sense for him to come back. I did think it was funny the other day. They were showing him on TV. They were showing a split screen of him during the game. And for some reason, Nick Foles looked like Napoleon Dynamite and freaking Gardner Minshew look like Uncle Rico is pretty hilarious. But this is the new age of sports with big contracts. Players can make a lot of money and then be gone 5 years after their career's over, or 5 years into their career, or be out of here. Or and then you'll have guys like Foles stick around. You'll have a number of like the Fitzpatricks and guys that are capable but don't command the massive contract that I think is going to be a little bit more norm. I know you're going to have like all these guys getting bigger and bigger contracts, and the teams that are going to do poorly are the teams that pour big contracts into players that don't produce the numbers they should, while you have teams that are almost in a decent spot of like they have an underpaid quarterback because but maybe not the most successful, but gives them wiggle room to get out of those deals and get into other ones. So football is definitely going to be interesting going forward with all of the new with all of the ways that the contracts are essentially doing things for the sport of football, because it definitely changes. So I actually thought about this, and I meant to bring it up in a past episode, but I would like to personally. I hate the parity in football. I would like to see teams go out and spend money. They want to spend money and compete at the top level and pay players whatever the hell they want. So I have two kind of plans for this. One plan would be and I think it would make it real interesting if you can get another league to almost be a minor league to the NFL, and then even another minor league to the NFL, and have like a 3-deep system. Gives more players the possibility to not be done after college or like a 1 or 2 year window and be able to make it to the pros. But if you did it like the English Premier system and had relegation, you would have less teams tanking because if you're in the bottom, I believe it's the bottom 2, I think, get relegated. It's 2 or 3. I should have looked that up before, but basically play an entire season, champion is champion. Even if you go to still keep the playoff system, you take the bottom 2, and they are now relegated into the league below. So you'd have teams changing leagues as you go. Then the winner and I think the runner-up of the league below, they become part of the NFL. So say a team pops up in Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho wins this tier 2. Now next year they will play in the NFL. Could happen that they could be in the bottom 2 or whatever it is, 2 or 3 next year, and go back down. So you're flexing through all the things. Independently owned operations. So it's not like a minor league team to like the Dolphins have a minor league team. But in saying that, you have players and you have transfer windows. 2 transfer windows a year. You could freaking trade players in. So it'd be like obviously like maybe week 1 through week 7. And then a week maybe like, I don't know, 13 through 15. I don't know. Whatever you want to go with it. Usually it's like twice a year biannually. So you can make some trades from other leagues if you want, or transfer players out. And all this should be just money-based. Literally, whatever team wants to play, whatever. So if Tom Brady wants to make $500 million from a team and some team's willing to pay for him, $500 million it is. This would ensure that teams that want to win and pump money into it would pump money into it. Terrible probably for a fan like me who's a Lions fan who probably wouldn't have the team pump money into the franchise to just go get stacked. This is like the Yankees philosophy of like buying the best player. But why not? You'd allow players to make as much money as they wanted. The contracts would be the contract. You move the contract if you want to. So say you want to pay Tom Brady $500 million and it's a 4-year deal. Guess what? You want to move Tom Brady. You can move Tom Brady. If someone else wants to pay that contract, they can pay it and you can get rid of him. Bye-bye. You can bring in whoever you want. Why regulate it so much? You know what? Parity is nice, but also so is competitiveness. You'd have probably a higher top 10 teams, fan bases, but the sport would grow, I think, exponentially. Also, I think if you had teams that were garbage, like the Dolphins and the Jets right now, guess what? Now they have peril of like, we got to play good so we don't go down to the second league. Also, though, now they're the best second league team, so guess what? They could win at the second league level and win a title. and then that helps them a little bit in feeling better about coming back up. So it's not bad. And then you do that for a third league as well. So like they would have a relegation, and maybe the bottom one, top one, move up. So you could literally go from in 2 seasons from 1 to 3. Doesn't typically happen because usually those teams are better. So that'd be one way to go about it, is the English Premier League structure, soccer, where they just pay them whatever they want, and the teams are competitive because you have superstar teams. And if you don't, and you don't have an owner that wants to pay all that money, either guess what, they sell the team, which they would probably make more money than they're making now because those teams are more popular and the sport's more popular. So why not? And then also you'd have owners in there that want to win championships because it's either a revenue boost or whatever. A lot of those soccer teams are like some of the most expensive franchises you could buy in the world. So I like that structure. Second structure is some way of taking the quarterback cap number out of the cap. So keep a salary cap, whatever, 150 million or whatever it is per year. Now you take the quarterback out of that cap. The only caveat to that, sorry about that, is that you would put a percentage on the cap number for a quarterback. So you're not paying a quarterback that's $90 million and creating issues in the locker room. So if the cap is 150, the quarterback can make 33% of the cap. So whatever that is. So if the cap goes up to 200, it's more money. If it's at 150, it's less money, obviously. So that would be the max you could pay them. Now you're creating a max. It's almost like the NBA with their super max contracts. Also, I don't mind the bird rights issue, like for NBA, where if you're the team that holds that player, you can pay them more than any other team. Gives you the team that has them in a competitive advantage to keep the players. Now you'd have more players playing on one team. So if you think about this, the Steelers are a good example to use. So the last year, the Steelers had Le'Veon Bell, they had Antonio Brown, who both wanted to get paid. They also had Ben Roethlisberger that they had to pay, and they had a bunch of other players that they had to pay. They could have paid Le'Veon Bell and freaking Antonio Brown whatever they wanted to make because they wouldn't have had to worry about Ben Roethlisberger's cap hit. And the quarterback takes up an extreme amount of the cap from these teams. So take them out, keep the cap at the same amount. All the players will make more money, and then the quarterback doesn't count in your cap because it's the one position where no matter how you strategize, that is a key part of the sport is paying your quarterback, having a franchise quarterback that's going to take up a lot of your contract. So you'd have probably the Legion of Boom and all of those guys still playing there. You would keep all of these franchises more intact and have less movement throughout because you'd have the ability to pay these players more money, and then everybody would stay, and you could actually homegrown your talent, draft players in, and drafting would actually matter more because you'd be keeping your players if they're good, and then also not being murdered by a cap hit by your quarterback. So that would be a good way to go about it too. So those are my two options. I think you either have to somehow take the quarterback cap number out of the cap so you can pay your players without it having to worry about retaining your quarterback, or go to the English Premier League where you have like the teams can get relegated, and then also like you can have different flow in there. So you have teams trying to be competitive because they don't want to go down. So because obviously playing in the second tier is not as beneficial as playing in the top tier. So and then you have teams that are going to strive and teams that could come from like these little tiny towns, keep their players and slowly move up. A lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times, like if you had a team in Toledo, Ohio, they would have their good player bought out by a better team. But that brings in money to your franchise, so then you can go out and spend that on like 2 or 3 different people. If you've ever played FIFA soccer, it's a really interesting, cool way to go about it. You can actually like do some really cool things with like selling off players and then like buying 2 other players to make more of your percentage of your team better and stuff like that. It's an interesting way. I've always thought of that as a way that you could definitely fix like the salary cap structure of teams. You could even do it in baseball if you like separated the talent of players out of like a class system where like everybody has like their top league and then their AAA and AA. You just make them their own independent franchises. You could do it that way as well. So, but that would be how I would fix the NFL and quarterbacks. So, moving on from that, I had this interesting. So this is where it's going to get a little bit screwy. So the other day I was watching Shark Tank. I watched Shark Tank for the first time. I posted on Twitter. I didn't realize Shark Tank was as big as it was. I definitely got a lot of like side eyes for never having watched it. Even my wife was like, "You've never watched Shark Tank?" I was like, "No," but I definitely found it really interesting because, like, you're standing in front of some people that obviously can make or break a company. Not necessarily going to like for sure like give you a guarantee that you're going to have like success, but enough so that it's beneficial for you to go on there and like sell part of your company to them. Or worst case scenario, you go on, or maybe best case scenario, you go on, no one picks it up, but you now have exposure over national media because you're in front of all these national media. It's really like the only way that like regular cable TV is actually still working in the favor of somebody, because you can get your product in front of people basically as a free commercial if they don't pick you up. If they do pick you up, then also cool, you now have a backing, and that's something you chose to do. So I found that interesting, but that also like made me think of like other shows. And then I saw this article that was like totally kind of off of the beaten path about Running Wild with Bear Grylls, and it used to be one of my favorite shows. I was actually like, man, I wish they still made that show. I didn't know it was on. It's still on. It's on Nat Geo. So who knew that? But I clearly didn't know it was on National Geographic. I loved watching that show. It's a very interesting show to see people who are like in the entertainment business and stuff go out and be out in the wild with Bear Grylls, who's just a crazy man, and does all these awesome things and like can survive for years on like figs and stuff like that. So, but it brought me around. I was reading an article. I think it's Brie Larson who's going to be on. I think it's tonight. I think it's Tuesday. This is being filmed on Tuesday, so I'll probably have this up later tonight. But on who I would want to see, and then on Bear Grylls, because I was like, it'd be interesting to see so and so on there. But I wanted to narrow it down. So I love podcasts. So my parameter was which podcast host, top 10 or top 5, would I want to see on Running Wild with Bear Grylls. And I came up with a list. So here's my list. Number 5. We'll go from 5. Number 5, Bert Kreischer. Bert Kreischer hosts The Bertcast, which is an awesome podcast where he interviews mostly comedians, but also other people as well. Just had a really good one with Jim Gaffigan's wife, where she talked about a book that she wrote about having a brain tumor, and the stuff through that. It was a really good interview. You should watch that if you haven't. Bert Kreischer would be hilarious because he seems like he's down for anything. He's funny as hell. He'll put himself in weird situations. He has the Mickey Mantle gene, so he'd definitely go for it and be out there doing whatever he could possibly do, and probably in a hilarious fashion as well. And Bear Grylls would probably be cracking up at some of the stuff. Bert Kreischer, number 5. Then number 4 would be Gary Vee. Gary Vee is interesting to me. So he's a entrepreneur, also like investor, and like just all around like smart guy who works like probably 18 hours a day. So it'd be interesting first off to see him disconnect from working for 2 days, and like going around Bear Grylls and like telling him the story of like how he like immigrated into America at a young age, and then like learned how to work hard from his parents, and just had the entrepreneurial experience and did bad in school, and then worked his way up, and started his own business, and that thing's going through the moon. Be interesting to see his perspective, because he doesn't strike me as a super outdoorsy type of dude, but he's a New Yorker, so he's got a little toughness to him. It'd be interesting to see the conversations between him and Bear Grylls, because he also doesn't like hold punches, and he's not like a fluff it up. He's very authentic to himself, so it'd be interesting to see him like be like Bear Grylls be like, "Oh, let's eat this squirrel," and and Gary be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it'd be interesting to see like that dynamic. Next on my list, number 3, Andrew Santino hosts the Whiskey Ginger podcast. It's a podcast that I found probably about like half a year ago. Andrew Santino is a hilarious stand-up comedian, actor, and hosts this awesome podcast where they drink whiskey, and he does great interviews, and he has a lot of interesting people on there. He seems to be very much like in the ballpark of like how I am. Like, I would honestly love to go do the show because I'm not like, it's not situations that I would typically put myself in, but I do have enough of that, like, yo, I'll try it, let's do it. And especially if I'm put in a situation where I'm like, guess this is like what I gotta do, I'll do it. So like, reminded me of like Andrew Santino in that situation where I think he talks a big game, but he's also like, this is fucking crazy. But then would be like, I guess I gotta do it though. Like, and would probably do it. So I thought that would be interesting. So the Red Rocket would be an interesting Bear Grylls Running Wild with candidate. He'd also be funny on there as well. So number 2, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan obviously has the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, which everyone knows. If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably because somehow you found podcasts through Joe Rogan, or someone who started a podcast because of Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan crushes life and does a bunch of stuff. He obviously he hunts and he does all that stuff. He's always a physically fit guy, so I don't think he would have a hard time with any of that stuff. He's also very insightful, so I think it would be interesting to see him out there with Bear Grylls and almost like doing Joe Rogan Experience, but like while you're running wild. It'd be an interesting combo because I think he'd definitely get a lot out of it, and then he'd have a lot of questions for Bear Grylls while also being interviewed by Bear Grylls in that back and forth. I think that would be some pretty cool, interesting things come out of that. Also, Joe Rogan's hilarious, so you'd have that aspect. And he also is very knowledgeable, so he'd actually be able to, like, I think, be really interested in learning a lot of the things that, like, he might learn while he's out there, but then also using some of the stuff that he already knows to, like, be part of, like, advanced running wild Bear Grylls. So, last but not least, should come as no surprise, Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee would be hilarious on Running Wild with Bear Grylls. Mostly like Andrew Santino, where I think he'd be like the hilarity of the situation would just cause him to joke a ton and then be like, what am I doing out here? But then also he's like an athletic dude and he could definitely probably do a bunch of stuff. Also, wouldn't be surprised if, like, for some reason, like, they were running wild with Bear Grylls in, like, the coldest fucking place on earth and he showed up in jorts and a tank top. So it'd be the situation. He definitely would probably not prepare to go do it in the way that he, like, a lot of people would, and he would just be like, okay, yep, I'm gonna do 75 things, and then, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go run wild with Bear Grylls. Let me hop on a private jet and find Bear Grylls. So it'd almost be like just running into his schedule and not realizing that was in there, and be like, oh, let's go, and then he's gone for 2 days and creating magic on a mountain somewhere with Bear Grylls. So that would be my top 5. And yeah, I haven't done one of those in a while, so top 5 there. And that's going to end the show, really. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You can follow me at PatchofBlackDFS on Twitter. Also, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Swiss Army Man Pod. So either place. Twitter's more active. I need to get better at doing Instagram stuff. Just been kind of crazy busy. But no excuses. I'm going to get better at that. So follow us there. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Tell a friend. Share it on your social media. Subscribe. Do all those things. Every little bit helps. And I appreciate it. Trying to create a community here. And so I'm always open. If you want to talk, you want to ask me a question, feel free to do it in a public forum like Twitter. I'm always down to have conversations with people, or if you want to be more private about it, you can DM me and we can chat that way too. So look forward to doing another one of these very soon, and hope you guys enjoy. All right, peace.
Your heart is more than a machine, pumping blood through your body, doing things we've never seen. Their words come like arrows when they fly, with mechanical precision they could cut you up inside. But you're more than bolts, like this city's more than steel and stone. Soon your heart is gonna overflow. Push it back down, you come up again. 'Cause circuits freeze and androids never dream. You're more than a machine. Touch screens, fingertips and pretty lights. We go through the scanner sideways, see you on the other side. Your flesh, all your skin and all your bones, carry all our generations with their futures still unknown. But you're more than bolts, like this city's more than steel and stone. Soon your heart is gonna overflow. Push it back down, you come up again. 'Cause circuits freeze and androids never dream. You're more than a machine. You're more than bolts, like this city's more than steel and stone. Soon your heart is gonna overflow. Push it back down, you come up again. Circuits freeze and androids never dream. You're more than a machine. You're more than a machine.